I see here in this first part, the invitation rejected. A setting, I'm going to kind of give you the background. We're going to see a little twist, a surprise, and we're going to see the sentence that follows. First of all, the setting. A wedding banquet is used as imagery in the Bible for the kingdom of heaven or the kingdom of God more than any other analogy. And just a little definition of terms. The kingdom of heaven is God's divine reign, rule, and order in the hearts and lives of people on this earth now and in the future. The kingdom of heaven is God's divine reign, rule, and order in the hearts of lives of people on this earth now and in the future. A kingdom, in essence, is the effective reach of one's will. A kingdom is the effective reach of one's will. Kind of like on a Sunday, in your easy chair, your recliner, when NFL football begins. You have your remote control, and there it is, the effective reach of your will, your kingdom. The wedding banquet. The king is most likely imagery for God. The son, Jesus Christ. And then the bride would be those who we see will RSVP, yes, the church. So this was 2,000 years ago. Here's kind of what would happen there. It was a countrywide celebration, was a wedding banquet. It was a countrywide celebration that would last for several days, usually up to 7 days of partying. The chef would have to return his fee plus a penalty if he embarrassed the host. I saw a clip on TV not too long ago about how Wolfgang Puck charges a whole lot of money for extravagant wedding celebrations. Can you imagine if Wolfgang kind of messed up and had to give it all back plus a penalty? That's what happened 2,000 years ago. The guests would drink undiluted wine, the best stuff from expensive glassware. Invitations were sent well in advance, including the names of others invited. So kind of like in the parable, the invitation gets sent out. The invitation included names of others who were invited. Steve Longbreak's going to be there. Lance Clark's going to be there. The governor's going to be there. The president might be there if we were looking at modern day terms. So you had really plenty of notice to respond, and you also knew who was coming, okay? Well, a second invitation then would follow, and it was delivered by a messenger who brought a personal summons either the day before or the day of the banquet. That's why in the parable it says, hey, it's all ready. Come to the banquet. But there's a twist and a surprise to Jesus' listeners of the parable. And the surprise is this: the people rejected the king's first and second invitations with excuses. The people rejected the king's first and second invitations with excuses, and there was a sentence. Now, this is interesting. The sentence was death and fire. Death and fire was only used in the most serious treason or revolt against the king. And Jesus might be alluding to the destruction of the Jerusalem temple in 70 A.D., which a couple chapters later he talks about kind of in the same environment. It's interesting. Rejecting the invitation of the king warranted the highest level of punishment. Death and fire. Rejecting the invitation was considered treason or revolt against the king. The king, God, has sent an invitation to each one of us, heaven's invitation, to celebrate the life of his Son, of Christ in us, 24/7, 168 hours a week in whatever we do. And I want to ask you today what I ask myself as I study this parable. What excuse are you using to reject heaven's invitation? What excuse are you using to reject the invitation to the kingdom of God? God's divine reign, rule, and order in your heart in your life now and in the future? What excuse are you using? Now, this is just me, but I think I see a pattern in hard-heartedness throughout the Scriptures, and I think I see it again here. Hard-heartedness or pride is the rejection of the invitation. Rejecting the invitation is an external sign of an internal condition. Rejecting the invitation is an external sign of an internal condition because it all goes back to a matter of the heart. And if you look at this in verse 5, it says there was this group that paid no attention, and they just went off to their field and to their businesses. I call that proud heart, I think the imagery best for it is a heart of sand. It's kind of like the people in the modern day parable that I shared first who thought that maybe the dot-com billionaire couple was powering up on them. It was an ashamed response, a shaming response. You're trying to power, what are you doing? You can't help me. What are you doing? And they don't care. They go off their field, we go off to our business when God sends the invitation. The other kind of pride is in verse 6, and it's the people who are kind of hard-hearted. I call it a proud heart of stone. It's rigid, hard, doesn't move very easily. And it takes a severe tool to be shaped, just like sand takes a storm in order to be shaped and be useful. And it's kind of like a religious heart, that we think that our goodness is going to make God do something for us, including saving and sanctifying us. That we're going to manipulate a deity. We trust in our own good works, going to church, reading the Bible, leading a ministry, all of which are very good things, but it all goes back to the heart with which you do them. How we RSVP to the invitation is an external sign of an internal condition. Whether it's a heart of sand or a heart of stone, it's a hard heart of pride that rejects the invitation to the kingdom of God, to the celebration of Christ in everything that you think, in everything that you choose, in everything that you feel, in everything that you pray, with all your time, with all your talent, with all your treasures. I want to ask you today, what excuse are you using to reject heaven's invitation? Is it manifested in a click? Is it manifested in a smoke, a toke, a pop of a pill, the use of particular language, a certain kind of dress, an illicit relationship? Or, as we talked about, is it manifested in religious works where at the end of the day it's a hard heart of stone and you say, look at me? Either way, it's an external sign of an internal condition. It's a hard heart, a proud heart that rejects heaven's invitation.